Alright peeps, it's not that often that I get involved in politics in any big way, and I won't be getting involved in politics in any big way now, other than to say that at this current moment in time there are a lot of people all over the world, news pundits, you know, people with large platforms, independent, people who are anti the system at this moment in time, and we can all name, you know, a dozen of them, I would have thought. And so I've just been listening to a stream of these particular variety of video, and of course they are all talking about what the governments are doing. They are very, very rarely inferring to the hidden hand of the globe, the globalists. In all of their infinite wisdom, these people are PhDs, and they're, you know, highly educated in certain sectors, and they're authors of many books, and they're on many, many platforms, and they're speaking, you know, about the state of the world and where we're going and where have we come from and what's the government's doing, but very, very few of them are addressing where it all stems from. And some of you viewers will know something about the globalists, and prior to the globalists was like the David Icke and Alex Jones hidden hand, and then we can go back to the Illuminati and the Ashkenazi you-know-whos, and, you know, all these people that have been manipulating the world for a long, long time. And so all they are ever going to be doing is trying to change policy at a shop floor level. Now, of course, the policies do not come from the shop floor level. They come from offices on the 50th floor of skyscrapers in the major cities all over the world. And so these people, in their infinite wisdom, are still barking up the wrong tree. It seems that they still have many sections of the jigsaw puzzle which they haven't managed to be able to grasp and place within their pictorial of what's going on in the world. Now, obviously, pre-COVID, the world indeed was deeply fast asleep. And since the advent of COVID, when people such as myself and some of you were just calling it all out, way above its time, as soon as we saw that shit, we knew it was all a scam. And we were just up in arms going, what the fuck is happening to the people? Look at them, they've got double masks, triple masks, they're wearing like canes with flags on the end, you know, 8 feet long, dangling from their shoulders, so nobody could come close to them. You've got people trying to get people arrested, and, you know, even Judge Judy, she was advocating for all of the anti-vaxxers to be put in another country entirely of their own, or on a huge island. Absolutely crazy stuff that these fear-premised idiots were speaking from. But whether the idiots have woken up to any degree is highly debatable. But one thing for sure is that many of the world's intellectuals have indeed woken up. We're talking about professional people from all over the world who are now having something to say about it. And so that was a wonderful thing, a beautiful thing. That the powers that be laid that one on us, because now we have peeked behind the veil, and many more people are starting to investigate and disbelieve and question and all these sort of things. And so we're on the right trajectory, but my frustration is because the people that are, you know, the major pundits, the ones that have something to say, that do the data gathering and the promulgating of all this stuff, if they are on any of the major platforms, then they have to mind their P's and Q's. You know, so anybody on YouTube, of course, they can't talk about this hidden hand, this major conspiratorial woo-woo stuff, because all of the idiots and even reasonably educated people are just going to be rejecting that, because you need to have a lot of information. You need to have done a lot of research before you're going to be open to taking that on board, when it really is actually a thing, and it's been going on for thousands of years, and it may even be interdimensional and non-human, and that's where it gets real wacky. But what I'm observing now on YouTube, of course, are many myriad of intellectuals to a degree. They are products of universities, and they've been in academia, and maybe they're politics, they're lawyers, they're doctors, this sort of thing, and they've started to see that, hang on, certain things don't make sense, but they can't speak out about it in their own fraternity. Can you imagine what happens to doctors when they would question these things? Well, they would lose their 400 or 500,000 pounds job a year, wouldn't they? They'll be rowed out of town, and this goes across the board with many people. And I was just listening to a Nigel Farage, one of our major British politicians, which has got abreast of what's going on up there, and indeed even speculates and lays it on the line. But even he is being threatened, or the opposition are calling for his arrest, just because he's pointing out legitimate stuff, and just because he's questioning stuff that shouldn't be questioned at this moment in time. And so that's the policy. It really is a fascist regime under the auspices of democracy. We no longer live in democracies, people. I don't think there's a single democracy on the planet anymore. They died out, you know, some years ago, and since the advent of COVID, we really started to get abreast of how diminished our democracies, and how our power as civilians and the peoples of these countries, how limited our power actually is, because nobody's listening, and all that they're going to do is smash us with truncheons and all the rest of it, and arrest us and cancel us and block us and all that sort of underhand stuff, which you would all realise pertains to fascist and communist states. And so we have to ask ourselves, where's the difference? Where's the line between these fascist dictatorial states, the communist dictatorial states, and the so-called democratic dictatorial states? They've all seemed to have amalgamated into one sort of socialist stroke communist stroke fascist global state, haven't they? Yes. And so I'm just going to play you a few seconds of just one video, which basically is from a very prominent British intellectual, and he's saying the same as many people are saying, but these people are only directing at the Muppets, the puppets in government. And in our particular instance, the British government, Keir Starmer has been recently inaugurated into the House of Parliament, and he is an outright fascist, and evidently has he has his orders from the powers that be, and the orders from the powers that be are to destroy this nation. break the backbone of whatever ideology Britain ever stood for, and this is of course happening all over Europe and all over the world, in America, breaking the backbone, breaking the culture, dismantling our cultural ethics, and making us terrified to say anything in opposition to any other culture or creed that come into our particular vicinity and start to build very powerfully their own culture, which they're allowed to have. But we're not allowed to have our culture. That's all being stripped away from us. But then when you look around, you can see that, well, there's Indian town, there's a Chinatown, there's a Muslim town, and all these things going on, and they've got the very, very powerful rituals and everything, which they're very, being protected, aren't they? But everything that the Caucasian Westerner stands for is being dismantled. And so, of course, this is a policy from you-know-whos, and anybody knows anything about the Protocols of Zion and the Illuminati will know a little bit of where this is coming from. It's been on the cards for a long, long time, and it's about a small group of very, very powerful people wanting to break the balls of the whole world, because in their history, throughout hundreds of years, they have been expelled from every single nation on the planet due to their nefarious, wicked actions. And now they are in such a position of power because the whole world went to sleep, particularly after the Second World War, and that's when they gained their enormous power. And so this is where we are now, and these people with a very, very minuscule population have now took autonomy over the whole world, because for a long, long time they've owned all the banks and all the industry and all the land and all the resources. And so, well, who is addressing that? Nobody would dare to address that, and that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem. And when people, have and do address that, then they are just squished like a gnat. And so, what are we going to do about this, people? How are the masses going to wake up to that? Because as far as the masses are concerned, this stuff is all on the shop floor. It's all what they can see with their own eyes. They can hear Keir Starmer and they can hear other politicians speaking, and they go, oh yeah, I don't like that guy, that guy's the bad guy, that guy's just a puppet. And if he wasn't there, then there'd be somebody else, and there's 1,000 of them lined up to come to take that one's position all over the world. Up there is the problem, people. And in recent videos yesterday I was blustering and I'm saying I'm not with the people, I'm not with the idiots. Because I despise the weakness, I despise the laziness, I despise the ignorance, I despise the lackadaisical, ignorant, nonchalant attitude they've got, because they've got no idea what they are about to lose and where the world is going if these people get their way. And so, of course, I'm torn between the devil and the deep blue sea, because I'm not one of them, albeit I can know where they're thinking from, and I can on occasions have a tendency to think like them. Because if you ask the question, look, would it be natural for sheep to have autonomy over lions? Of course it wouldn't, would it? It's completely unnatural. It would never happen in the cosmos. It could never possibly happen. If it ever did, then of course the lion would become a sheep and the sheep would become lions. So everything would be inverted. And so how could we expect the sheeple to become like lions? It's an impossibility, isn't it? Look what happened in the past. There's only ever been very few strong-minded, strong-willed people which have managed to gain some sort of a platform and impart whatever their hypothesis or politics or ideology was onto the masses. And a classic example is what happened in Germany, beginning of the 1930s. And we can see how powerful that was. Really, really powerful. Because the people got behind that movement. The people had had enough of being treated in a certain way. They felt absolutely smited in relation to the ramifications of the First World War and the Treaty of Versailles and all different sorts of things. And so the people had a vengeance, and they were just dying. They were just in a state of, you say, difficult to say, the state that they were in. They were ready, and they were primed for something that they didn't know what could come about, until somebody started to offer it to them, and then they said, fuck yeah, we'll have a piece of that, because it was very empowering to them. How are we going to empower the masses to take our country back? You see, the German people, they took their country back from a certain variety of people. The same people now own the world, and it's going to be a very, very tough cookie as to how the people are going to be taking their nations back. And I won't say never, because there are certain auspicious signs. There are people out in the streets, there are rioters, there are many people vocalising their opinion, but as quick as anybody does that, the governments, the Stasi, are bringing in powers to suppress that and threatening, even if people take videos or photos of rioting in Britain, then they will have their accounts taken down, and they will be arrested, prosecuted, and possibly imprisoned. Can you imagine, just for recording what is going on, but the government doesn't want the people to know? Now that's a proper dictatorship, people. So any of you that think you're living in a democracy, you better start thinking again. And so in those videos I put up yesterday, I'm pretty red-blooded, and I'm tired of the lethargic, dumbass cowardice of the general public. And I'm just wondering, you know, how long is it going to be? You know, since 2019, you know, we had the wake-up call, and okay, so maybe it took another couple of years before more people started to wake up, but you know, 2024 now, if the world doesn't wake up within the next 2 years, then I can't really imagine it ever going to be waking up, because it's absolutely plain as day to see what is going on around the world. And you know, all of the nations are being thrown into one melting pot, and our cultures are being destroyed, and our ideologies are being destroyed, and everything we ever knew and stood for in relation to our ancestral history and our personal local history is being poisoned and trashed and stamped on and spat on and supplanted by brown people from all over the world that most of us know nothing about, and all of a sudden they're getting all the money, they're getting all the protection, they're getting all the privileges. And if people, indigenous people, the salt of the earth, if they ain't going to start waking up and doing something, non-compliance, out in the street marching, if they don't start to do that very, very soon, then I don't hold any hope. I think the human being is too far gone. They're too sedated. They are too wrapped up in what they have bought into, i.e. the mortgages and the certificates from the university, which allow them to work in certain institutions and organisations as long as they toe the line and follow the policy rules, you know. And for those of you that haven't seen George Orwell's 1984, I think it's high time you fucking did. Come on, people, you've got to fucking get with it. Anyway, I'm going to just give you this short video. So you can
Campbell was one in which I simply
you can follow yourselves on the feed.
The death of Europe as happening is indeed what is now happening. And I said this, as many people have noted, not in a spirit of glee, but in one of deep lamentation. I never wanted to be proved right on this, and it gives me absolutely no joy to have been proven right that the importing of very large numbers of people, illegally and legally, from very different cultures into a society which totally fails to integrate them will lead to massive problems, including at some point a massive backlash. Now, it's interesting that Alistair Campbell should have been one of the ones to try to start this pile on. Of course, Alistair Campbell was part of the Labour government that in the late 90s and early 2000s massively ramped up illegal and legal migration into the UK. He's actually one of the architects of this problem, a problem which one of his colleagues at the time described as being deliberate. One of his colleagues came out.
That video, I'll just show you again. That's Douglas Murray, and he's speaking about a certain somebody, and you can watch that if you have an interest. And then of course you've just got feed after feed after feed, which will, you know, continue your education into a certain something which is going on. But as I said, they don't speak about the depth of it at the dizziest heights, where very, very few people have any clue about what's going on. They're all speaking about it at the superficial surface level, and it's kind of like something that Einstein says: you can't solve a problem with the same mindset that it was created in. And so we are not going to be able to solve the problem on the shop level, because if you get rid of one politician, then another one's going to come from the exact same source. We've got to go to the root of it. We've got to go to the source of it. And some of you know who that is. You know where these people came from. You know what they stand for. And that's the issue that we've got in the world, because they've so very, very massively and cleverly enshrouded themselves in anonymity and secrecy. And they're almost impenetrable. Who really knows who they are? We can call out a few people. We can call out certain family names who, you know, some of you will be aware of, but that you know, it isn't the height of what's going on. It is something which is of a supernatural origin, in relation to maybe even some sort of egregore, a very, very powerful spiritual, non-corporeal entity. And of course all we have to do then is relate this sort of stuff to what was written in the Old Testament to have some sort of an idea about this sort of thing. Anyway, people, it's immensely complex. It's very, very, very multifaceted, and if you don't know too much about this stuff already, well, I mean, to start now is better late than never, but there's an enormous amount to learn with the background to know really what is going on. But other than that, anyway, a change of energy today, a change of delivery. You know me, I try different things, and I often say things that of course I don't stand by, I don't have an adherence to, because some of the things are quite outlandish. I say things for effect on lots of occasions to see what response I can get from you, to see who's out there, to see what sort of dispositions you have, to see what character you have, to see how strong or weak you are, and all this sort of stuff. And so, anyway, I don't know whether I'll have much more to say over the next few days about this, because it's not really my bag. My bag is philosophy and human psychology. I can speak about the psychology of it, but very few people seem to be interested in that, because they have no relationship with their own psychology. They don't know anything about psychology, and of course that's where everybody gets lost. But at least when I'm speaking about this sort of thing, you can watch the same things that we all can watch, and you'll make of it what you will. And so make of it what you will, people. But one thing's for sure, the world is heading for a very, very deep paradigm shifting confrontation. And out of that, who knows what's going to come. It all depends on the zeitgeist, the spirit of the salt of the earth people. Whether we are prepared to let it happen because we're too weak, we're too ignorant, we're too stupid, we just don't really care, or we're just too numb. Or whether we really can find that indigenous ancestral spirit within us, and we're going to get in touch with it, and we're going to bring it to the forefront, and we're going to introduce it to the people around us.